They're suing me for something I didn't do. It's just the most bullshit thing. And I literally had to pay them a lot of fucking money.
Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis canceled.
They just decided to pull the plug.
Tab 3. Jake Paul has now been taken to court by Gervonta "Tank" Davis. Just days after the highly anticipated fight was cancelled, Paul finds himself facing a fresh lawsuit, turning what should have been a blockbuster event into a full-blown legal showdown. And this isn't just another headline in the boxing world. This dispute cuts straight into the heart of pride, money, and legacy. Careers, reputations, and massive promotional stakes are suddenly on shaky ground. What was expected to be the dream matchup of the year has unraveled into one of the most chaotic and embarrassing episodes modern boxing has seen. Instead of stepping into the ring, both fighters are stepping into a courtroom, and the fallout is growing by the hour. It's a dramatic turn that shows how quickly hype can collapse, and how the business behind boxing can be just as explosive as anything that happens under the lights.
So that fight that was supposed to go down with Jake Paul and Gervonta Tank Davis in Miami on November 14th is not happening. It has been canceled officially.
Months back, the buzz was impossible to ignore. Jake Paul, the flashy, outspoken YouTuber turned boxer who claimed he was here to shake up the sport, was set to face Gervonta "Tank" Davis, a fighter renowned for his devastating power. The matchup had everything: star power, controversy, and high stakes. Netflix was on board, millions of dollars were on the line, and the world was primed for a clash that promised to blur the boundaries between sport and spectacle. Fans were eager to witness a fight where hype collided with raw talent, and where every punch carried not just impact, but narrative weight. It was shaping up to be more than a boxing match. It was a cultural event, an electrifying mix of drama, money, and bravado that captivated audiences long before either fighter stepped into the ring.
You have someone that we come from two different sides of the world. We still on the same path to get the same thing.
Then, almost overnight, everything fell apart. Posters were up, cameras were ready, contracts had been signed, and just as suddenly, the fight was called off. One moment, the world was counting down to the showdown. The next, it had disappeared entirely. Jake Paul turned to social media to break the news, framing his cancellation as a bold, heroic choice. But the announcement only added fuel to the fire, leaving fans and the boxing community scrambling for answers. What was meant to be the pinnacle of hype now felt like a spectacular collapse, a reminder that even the most meticulously planned events can unravel in an instant, and that in the world of modern boxing, perception often matters as much as reality.
One of the most feared punchers in the sport of boxing. He's got a 93% knockout percentage. That's one of the best among current world champions.
Jake didn't hold back. He labeled Gervonta Davis a walking piece of garbage, accused him of abusive behavior, and claimed that Netflix had abruptly pulled the plug on the fight. According to Paul, his company stood for women's rights, and he could not, in good conscience, provide Tank with a stage. The way he delivered the statement, the timing, the theatrics, the carefully crafted moral stance, was designed to cast himself as the principled hero walking away from wrongdoing. Every word was calibrated to shape perception and control the narrative. For a brief moment, it seemed to work. Public opinion tilted just enough for Paul to appear as the ethical victor, someone standing firm against misconduct. But as the story continued to unfold, that carefully curated image began to crack. CLI?
Gervonta Tank Davis team fights back. After Jake Paul canceled the fight, went on a tirade.
But the applause was short-lived. The initial cheers quickly faded, replaced by murmurs that only grew louder with each passing hour. At first, the criticism came quietly, from people close to the promotion, but it didn't stay that way for long. Soon, Tank Davis's team began pushing back, challenging Paul's narrative, and before long, the story had reached seasoned boxing insiders. These were the people who had seen PR spin and smoke screens countless times, and they weren't buying it. What had started as a moment of seeming moral victory began to unravel, exposing the carefully constructed image as far more fragile than Paul had hoped. The louder the whispers grew, the clearer it became that this fight's fallout would be just as dramatic as the fight itself, if not more so.
I never let myself go there. I'm a fierce competitor.
Tank's team is now fighting back, and they're stating that Netflix did not in fact cancel the bout.
The story Jake Paul had so carefully constructed began to crumble under scrutiny. Netflix hadn't canceled the fight at all. According to Gervonta Davis's coach, Kenny Ellis, the bout was still very much scheduled. Ellis's words were sharp and unambiguous: Jake got scared. Just like that, a single, concise sentence dismantled the entire narrative Paul had spent days crafting. The image of moral courage, the aura of principled decision-making, it all evaporated instantly. What remained was clear: this wasn't a heroic stand, but fear disguised as virtue. The carefully spun tale of ethics and integrity had collapsed, revealing a very human, very ordinary reaction behind the theatrics.
He has made a significant impact on the sport of boxing. He has certainly brought new eyes to the sport. He's done so much in uplifting women's boxing.
There's no denying Jake Paul has brought fresh attention to boxing. He's pushed the sport into new audiences and done a lot to shine a light on women's boxing. But then the whispers started, this time about weight. The contract stipulated 195 pounds, yet insiders claimed Paul was nowhere near that mark. Sluggish, drained, and clearly out of shape, the man whose career was built on bravado suddenly appeared vulnerable, exposed in a way few had ever seen. Meanwhile, Gervonta Davis was evolving into a finely tuned weapon, faster, leaner, sharper, more dangerous with each passing day. As fight night drew closer, the contrast became impossible to ignore. To anyone paying attention, it looked increasingly likely that Paul could be walking straight into a brutal knockout. Kenny Ellis didn't mince words. Netflix hadn't pulled the plug. Jake Paul had. Fear, raw and undeniable, was the driving force behind the cancellation. The truth was blunt, simple, and devastatingly clear: the moral crusade, the heroic exit, it was all just a veneer covering fear. Explosive, unvarnished reality had won.
They called Gervonta Davis the tank for a reason. He only needs one shot to end the entire night. Davis, big straight left, down goes Gamble.
Fans started asking questions they had previously overlooked. If Paul's cancellation was truly a moral stand, why had he fought Mike Tyson, a man with a criminal record? Why Mike Perry, who carried multiple domestic abuse allegations? And yet now, Gervonta Davis was somehow the line that couldn't be crossed. Suddenly, what had been presented as a principled stance looked inconsistent, an exception to every prior fight, every previous controversy. The pattern didn't hold up under scrutiny, and the public began to see the narrative for what it really was: selective, self-serving, and far less about ethics than about image management. Questions that had been quietly whispered were now being openly discussed. The carefully curated story of virtue had gaps too large to ignore, and the heroism Paul claimed now seemed increasingly performative.
Jake fought a guy who was his age and was also considered a boxer, and he lost.
It just pisses me the fuck off. And then
you're good. Take a break.
Suddenly, Jake Paul's so-called moral high ground started to look less like bravery and more like a carefully constructed smokescreen for panic. Every tweet, every Instagram post, every staged public statement meant to justify his actions now read as what they truly were: damage control. Fans began connecting the dots. The speeches about standing up for women, the outrage-laden statements, the perfectly timed exit, they weren't acts of principle. They were a PR strategy designed to protect an image while concealing fear. And as Kenny Ellis's blunt words echoed, the reality became impossible to ignore. Jake Paul wasn't walking away from morality. He was fleeing a fight he knew he couldn't handle. The curtain had finally lifted, and the world got its first clear view of what was really happening behind the spectacle, behind the headlines, behind the bravado.
Jake Paul took that and ran with it and then used it as a catalyst to stain Tank's name but not have to fight him.
By this stage, Jake Paul's reputation was on the line in a way it never had been before. He wasn't fighting faded stars or viral sensations. He was preparing to face a legitimate, world-class knockout artist who plays for wins, not clicks or viral hype. The stakes were real, and the danger was unmistakable. For a moment, the PR story had flipped. Suddenly, Paul wasn't running from fear, he was protecting women. He wasn't quitting, he was taking a stand. It was a narrative designed to inspire admiration, and for a short time, it worked. But the illusion was fragile. The same statements meant to shield him from criticism now risked backfiring. The world was starting to see cracks in the story, and the carefully curated image of virtue was beginning to haunt him. What had been a moment of control was turning into a moment of reckoning.
I believe that he was making the money he says he's making. Showtime Boxing wouldn't have gone out of business, and Showtime would have made sure they kept.
Gervonta Davis isn't taking this quietly. He's now suing Jake Paul for defamation and breach of contract, alleging that Paul's false statements inflicted serious damage on both his reputation and his finances. The lawsuit paints a clear picture: Jake's so-called moral crusade wasn't a mistake or an innocent misjudgment. According to Team Davis, it was intentional and calculated, designed to mislead the public while avoiding the fight. If the claim that Netflix never canceled the event is proven in court, Jake could be on the hook for millions of dollars. This legal battle transforms a canceled fight into a high-stakes courtroom showdown, where truth, credibility, and money are all on the line.
What else to say? I didn't want to give this woman abuser a platform to grow his fans and to grow his bank account. My company champions women. I'm so sorry to everyone involved, mostly to the undercard fighters, to my team at MVP, and to my team who worked so hard.
Coach Kenny Ellis didn't mince words. According to him, Jake Paul wasn't stepping back to protect women, he was protecting his own record. The assessment was blunt, unflinching, and damning. Ellis went further, describing Paul's speeches about women as nothing more than a smokescreen, a PR stunt disguised as morality. Every carefully worded statement, every post designed to sway public opinion, was part of an image campaign rather than genuine principle. Supporting evidence from old interviews and screenshots only strengthened the point. In truth, Jake appeared panicked, out of his depth, and scrambling for any way to escape the fight. The bravado was gone, replaced by a stark, unvarnished reality. This was fear dressed up as virtue, and everyone could see it.
Ring Magazine. Jake Paul admits he's scared and losing sleep over a Gervonta Davis fight.